During a committee hearing, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez defended the Green New Deal and called out the absurdity of fossil fuel subsidies. Watch.
I would be remiss if I didn't talk or address some of the comments made across the aisle. And while I am incredibly flattered that the ranking member and many members across the aisle seem to be so enamored with a non-binding resolution presented by a freshman congresswoman sworn in 3 months ago, I think that ironically, despite that fixation, it doesn't seem that they've actually read the contents of the proposed and presented resolution. And so I would just, I would encourage that we don't need cliff notes for a 14-page resolution that was designed to be read in plain English by the American people. So I would encourage my colleagues to actually read the resolution presented so that they can speak to it responsibly and respectfully. I would also like to highlight that it is not responsible to complain about anything that we dislike as quote-unquote socialism, particularly when many of our colleagues across the aisle are more than happy to support millions and potentially billions of dollars in government subsidies and carve-outs for the oil and gas and fossil fuel industry. So the fact that subsidies for fossil fuel corporations are somehow smart, but subsidies for the development of solar panels is quote unquote socialist is just bad faith, and it's incorrect. And I think it's important to support and propose the fact that we need bold actions.
All right, now, a lot of what AOC says here is sort of common knowledge for people in progressive circles, but to have somebody within the walls of Washington saying this and in a committee hearing saying this is a big deal. The idea that the fossil fuel industry should continue to be subsidized despite all their profits, while you bring up the idea of, well, how about subsidies for other industries like, say, solar panels? Oh no, socialist, crazy idea, can't do that. But why? And obviously the reason why is because Republican politicians, mainly Republican politicians, but also a lot of Democrats, are literally being paid by the fossil fuel industry. I mean, that's one of their big donors. So that is the only reason they are defending fossil fuel subsidies while acting like subsidies to industries like solar panels is a crazy idea. I mean, the whole point, one of the main points of subsidies is to encourage growth in whatever industry. So when you have a budding, just new industry trying to expand and grow, subsidies help that growth. But fossil fuel, I mean, the fossil fuel industry, these massive corporations making billions and billions of dollars in profit off the fossil fuel industry, they don't need subsidies. The only reason they are getting them is because they have politicians. They are literally paying politicians in Washington with their donations. They are paying these politicians, paying them off to fight for them in Washington. So when you have a giant fossil fuel company giving you millions of dollars to your campaigns, well, yeah, that's going to have an impact on policy. But when you have a new industry unable to be able to have that kind of leverage over politicians, well, they're not going to be able to buy off politicians the way the fossil fuel companies can. And by the way, I wouldn't support that either. I don't think any company should be able to buy off a politician to fight for them. These elections should be publicly funded. Now, let me give you some more information on just how much money is wasted on fossil fuel subsidies. So a report from Oil Change International investigated American energy industry subsidies and found that in 2015 to 2016, the federal government provided $14.7 billion per year to the oil, gas, and coal industries on top of $5.8 billion of state-level incentives. Globally, the figure is around $500 billion. And the report only accounted for production subsidies, excluding consumption subsidies, support to consumers to lower the cost of fossil fuel use, and another $14.5 billion annually, as well as the costs of carbon and other fossil fuel pollutants. And the fossil fuel industry, of course, owns the GOP. So the OCI report noted that the Obama administration actually proposed to eliminate 60% of federal fossil fuel industry subsidies, but that proposal went nowhere for one obvious reason. Quote, in the 2015 to 2016 election cycle, oil, gas, and coal companies spent $354 million in campaign contributions and lobbying and received $29.4 billion in federal subsidies in total over those same years, an 8,200% return on investment. So This is the exact reason why we continue to have fossil fuel subsidies. And this is an issue as well in Canada. Now, I should also mention 88% of those donations from the fossil fuel industry went to Republican politicians. So yes, Democrats are also to blame here, but clearly not as much as Republicans are. Now, I also want to go to this clip of John Kerry defending AOC and the Green New Deal.
Secretary Kerry, my question to you is, printing a lot of new money and opening a bunch of new public banks a real way to pay for this Green New Deal project proposal?
Well, let me begin by saying, Congressman, there are a lot of different proposals about how to proceed. I don't know that any of them are coming from your party or your side of the aisle. Do you have a plan to deal with climate change? I think you said you're not sure of the science. But my focus is on how we're going to move forward. And, you know, we all have some differences with one piece of legislation or another. But in proposing what she has proposed together with Senator Markey, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez has in fact offered more leadership in one day or in 1 week than President Trump has in his lifetime on this subject. So we're talking about it. And my question is, where's your proposal? Did you have any hearings on it the last few years? Mostly on Benghazi, if I recall, when I was up here. So I think what we ought to do is stop the politics and get down to really serving the people of West Virginia.
And that's what that.
All right, John Kerry, who knew? I mean, this is for John Kerry, who I haven't followed too closely since he's left politics. He did a pretty good job here. He completely laid out this Republican and really exposed the issue. The GOP is in no position to criticize the Green New Deal or AOC on this issue. They have no plan. They're offering nothing. No ideas, nothing. I mean, how do you think history will look back on this moment? Do you really think history is going to look kindly on the Republican Party that first of all, for years and years, pretended climate change was a hoax, and now finally that they've actually acknowledged climate change is real, are refusing to actually do anything about it? Do you really think that history will look kindly on the Republican Party that is simply holding this position because they are paid by the fossil fuel industry to hold this position of doing nothing on this issue? Do you really think history will look kindly on them? Of course not. So understand here, if you have any trouble trying to figure out who's on the correct side here, just think in 20, 30, 40 years when the issue with the climate and extreme weather is going to continue to accelerate. Ask yourself, who will be on the right side of history right now? So when you see AOC fighting for at least something and the GOP doing nothing, ask yourself, who is doing the right thing in this moment? And clearly, it's politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and really anybody fighting for the Green New Deal.